back a year and a half ago in September, the commission released its overall recommendations and findings around generosity in the sector. And there were 9 major recommendations that came out for everyone, frankly, but definitely for different people in the nonprofit sector to consider. And whenever I think about being in a nonprofit, so those that are, staff, development professionals, board members, I like to start with ourselves. So how literally, what can I be doing? So that's where I love to talk about this culture of generosity, because within our own organizations, we can do things that embrace generosity to help get more and more people understanding that we ourselves are a nonprofit. What does that mean? What do we do with this support, and how important that it is? But on a broader scale, there are many things that organizations can be doing to work. As an example, one of the recommendations is working with local funders, so foundations, family foundations, and community foundations.
Community foundations. I was wondering that too. Yeah.
And how can they be leaders in the industry to bring together partnerships and things like that? So the mind automatically goes to can nonprofit organizations continue to, but also even maybe more strongly leverage relationships and partnerships with other organizations and their relationships with their community foundations, and how can we really be working for the overall good of increasing generosity.
And to me, that is also a reframe where, as opposed to just thinking linearly about my one organization, and importantly, thinking about creating cultivating a culture of generosity within my organization, immediately thinking to step outside of it and create those connections, I think for me anyway, talking to a lot of nonprofits, is really itself a reframe. So you have also worked across different sectors prior, I guess, I know now with MGale, you certainly
Sure.
work with many, many different organizations and many different verticals. But you, in your previous experience, worked with zoos and in education and in different places as well. What examples or practical steps have you seen organizations that you have direct relationships with take to really I'm now going to use words I'm not sure is exactly right, but embed that culture of philanthropy into an organization's DNA?
Sure, sure. So my thoughts on that, I mean, first and foremost, just like with any sort of effectiveness of an organization, it really does require the buy-in and embracing that at the top level of the organization. So whenever we think about board members, as an example, your top board leadership, getting to that level of embracing it. Now, that doesn't mean, however, that it has to necessarily start with the board if it's not already there. What I love about a culture, any culture, is that we are for sure impacted by the culture in which we're around, but we also have the opportunity to impact that culture. So what I like to really talk about with my clients is the fact that as a nonprofit professional, you have a sphere of influence within your organization. So we can embrace and really lean in to the culture in ways that we can lead that out. So where I have seen that be really most successful is where we really think strategically about those that we can influence, and leading by example in that way, and building partnerships. So
Yeah.
an example, and in if we need to dive into another example later, but an example that comes to mind is a museum that I worked with recently that really built a culture of generosity by really partnering their advancement team and the curatorial team in an all new way. So as an opportunity for the different teams to not be so siloed, and recognizing that they're both doing some of the same things, they're stewarding relationships. So how can we be strategic in that and recognize that advancement has a role to play in it, and so does the curatorial team, and what does that look like? Let's learn from each other. So by really opening up silos, by building bridges, by being really willing to train and to coach others, but also to be coached and to be trained by others, and recognize this is a two-way street. Just because another department or other people in an organization don't necessarily do fundraising all the time, they have their own area of expertise that they can bring to the table, and we can talk about and really dive into the role of philanthropy in both of those different areas.